your content will go and what content blocks you use. I mentioned what assets are. Those are those uploaded files and images that you're using on your website. They go in the assets pane. And then your menu items, we should be familiar with that from Tron, if you were a Tron webmaster. If not, it's just your typical navigation like the teams and departments, staff directory, and so forth. So all those different navigation options that you have on your website that take people to different parts, those are going to be your menu items. There are some subcategories within those terminology. So like your content blocks, you'll have access to all these different content blocks that are listed here. The one that you'll probably use the most is your HTML content block. And even though it's called an HTML content block, you don't need to know HTML to use that block. That's really where you're going to add your basic text content. So if I have a message I'm going to upload, I would use an HTML content block. Articles, and so if I'm typing up a quick article or the principal's page or a message from the principal, I would use an HTML content block to surface that information. The slideshow block container is just like it sounds. If I have an image slideshow, I could have something like that. So we had some events or something I wanted to highlight, I could use the slideshow block container. The hero carousels, similar like maybe what you've seen on the MCPS website, those big images at the top that go scrolling through, that's your hero carousel. They usually live at the top of the page. They do take up quite a bit of real estate, but they are kind of a cool way to highlight some of the great things that are happening in your school right there on the home page or different pages. You have a quick links box, just what it sounds like. That's your quick links to different pages or different items, similar to a menu content block, but those quick links are just like it sounds. It's quick links that you can make in a content block. And the rest, again, very self-explanatory. The video player block, the Google Maps block. So if you wanted to add a map for where your school can be found, you can do that. And then the form container. We won't cover that one too much, but if you had forms that you wanted to add, there is a block for that. Then you also have your different content type. You have a calendar item. We're familiar with those, how you can add events that are maybe happening at the school. Or coming up, whether especially for the fall, maybe online events that you have coming up, you could add those to the calendar. News and announcements, again, similar to what we're used to having on our websites already. As you have different announcements that you want to surface on your website, you can do that. And I really like with Episerver, you can set dates for some of those releases and kind of end dates as well. So that way you're not having to constantly go through and delete them. They'll kind of manage themselves if you set that up from the beginning. So that's really nice. And then the menu items are just those different navigation items, and those live in blocks as well. So you have a lot of different content blocks, and I know, and a lot, maybe some new terminology. And as I said, we wanted to kind of front load you with some of this, so that way, as we're demoing and we say HTML content block or hero carousel, you'll have at least some context. But again, it'll be more concrete once we're actually in the platform and showing you exactly what those are. All right, so what is your role as a webmaster? And as I said, your title here is webmaster, but I think calling you a web author is probably more accurate because you're really you're the managing editor of that information. You don't need to, again, know that HTML coding. You just need to know what content needs to be surfaced on the website. You'll have many sources, and many sources being the principal, grade level teams, maybe PTA has a message they need you to post, things like that. You're going to get many sources of information, and from many different sources. You have to determine how best to surface that based on your audience's needs. You need to ensure that the site meets general web regulations, and we'll provide you with some resources on that. The nice thing with the CMS is you're not able to do a whole lot of crazy stuff. It does keep you pretty regulated, so that way the content you're meeting or you're servicing does meet those web regulations. And then just knowing some current web standards and best practices, and I'll review some of those as well. Those are the big three that if you kind of use these 3 bullets as kind of your guiding principles as a webmaster, you'll be in pretty good shape moving forward. I'm going to go through these next ones. These are just some hints to maybe help your mindset when you're web authoring. And it comes from a Words Matter Writing on the Web article that was surfaced from a university up in Canada. But but your main goal is to communicate information. I would say, I would even add communicate it efficiently and succinctly, especially because it is our, let's see, that fourth bullet down right here. People don't really read online, they scan. And I think we could all say we're pretty guilty of that if you think about when you're looking at social media, Facebook's, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, you're scrolling, stop, scroll, stop until something catches your interest. Then you might read for a second, but there's really lots of scanning online. And I always use this with emails. Make sure that first sentence or two has the most important information, and then use bullet points after that, because as people are reading and scanning quickly, you really want to make sure that information is there and catches them, so that way they're getting what they need. And just remember that the web is available 24/7, and our audiences, whether they're families or different departments and school offices, they may be coming to your website at any time. So we really want to make sure that it is up to date, and that our website doesn't become stale. It's also a place that I know incoming parents may come to check out the school, that maybe they're buying a house in your district or moving to that area. We want to make sure that when they go to your school's website or your department's website to look up information, that it is up to date and accurate, and is an accurate portrayal of your school. So these are, again, just some hints to help you with some of those guiding principles. I think they do a nice job of just kind of framing what you should be thinking about when you're authoring and servicing content. So just some other helpful hints as a webmaster or web author: be plugged in, and that becomes even more challenging as we all may be working remotely. But knowing what does your school and office need to communicate, what does your community and audience need to know? Now that's, I think, ever so important right now, as we are not face-to-face and as connected. Trying to find ways to stay connected with your school and community, and getting the information out there for them that they need to know, that's pertinent to your school and so forth. So really, again, this may be challenging right now, but I think it's even more important to know what needs to be communicated from your schools and offices and to your community. I would say for a school-based, or even if you're central office-based, your supervisors or admin having their buy-in for using your website as a place to surface information, and even deciding with that supervisor or admin, deciding what is the information that goes on our website versus what information gets sent out through ConnectEd. And if you're using the school courses in Mindspace Classroom, what information goes there? So deciding where information falls in which buckets, and getting admin to buy in to that use of your website, I think, is key. I would even say, from personal experiences, setting up weekly or bi-weekly or monthly meetings with that admin to make sure to review, hey, here's the stuff I would like to put up on the website. Does this match your vision, and so forth. So I think that's always a great way to get buy-in and maintain that buy-in throughout the year as you're authoring and updating your website. And then the last one is just exactly what I was mentioning, is communicate with administration or maybe other teams that need to surface information, and share some of these current best practices with them as well that you're seeing here in this presentation. So just some tips to improve web authoring. Again, this comes from that same article, and I think a lot of it falls under, I know the Washington Post used to use the rule, and I say used to because sometimes I feel like they don't follow their own rule, but it should be at a third grade reading level, which really does get to these points of using those simple short words, avoid jargon, use an active voice, write in a conversational manner, use bulleted lists, again, thinking that people scan rather than read a lot of time, and then chunk the content one idea per paragraph. Again, it makes it really easy for them to digest information that's on the internet. And we also have to think about our audiences. We may have a lot of English as a second language audience, community members and families. So getting right to the point, and especially avoiding jargon and using those not simple but efficient words, I like to call them, really help our audiences take in and understand what we're trying to communicate. Just a quick little list here. I know this was helpful to me, and there's, you can Google 1,000 of these lists. this instead of that type of vocabulary. That's always nice, especially as I'm trying to stay succinct and trying to keep my messages right to the point. This is just a nice little helpful list that we have here for you. And again, a quick Google search will bring up even more of them for you, or you could search for this article, The Words Matter Writing on the Web, and get the complete list of these. So just a little helpful list here for you if you're trying to wrap your head around what does this look like when I need to use that simple language or that succinct language. All right, so these 5 tips for better websites, I think, are ever so important as you transition over to Episerver, because you kind of have, you're not starting fresh, but you are starting in a new program where you might want to do some house cleaning. I know, like when moving in a house, I just moved a few years ago, it was an opportunity to get all that old stuff out that we didn't want to take with us to the new house. So think about Episerver as our new house, and we just have all this stuff that we don't need anymore. So you might have, you know, a picture of a principal that was 3 principals ago. Delete that picture. You may have some other things that are in there that are just not necessary anymore because they're old. They're not relevant anymore. So take an opportunity to delete old pages, files, and images that maybe came over to Episerver. And Ryan will show you in the assets pane where you can find a lot of that, all those pages and files, and then how you can clean that up a little bit. Keep it simple, avoid flashy graphics, scrolling headlines, and so forth. I know it can be tempting to find, you know, animated GIFs that, you know, add a little something to that page, but when you're adding that on top of content, on top of other pictures, it becomes a little overwhelming, and it takes away from the main point of your website, which is the content, the information you're trying to share and communicate to people. Make all the critical information easy to scan, as we mentioned, using bullet points, making sure it's at the beginning. Think about you know, articles that you're reading, or even as you're scrolling social media, that kind of that hook, that clickbait title. I mean, we don't want to maybe go that far, but just something to catch them, so that way they, as they're scanning, they know exactly what this is going to be about, so they can get in there and actually read it rather than just scan it. Avoid redundancies as much as possible, although at the same time, I think having information in multiple places is not a bad idea as well. I just would try to avoid redundancies on the same page. Keep a consistent look and tone. So if you have multiple webmasters, some schools do, it's important, I think, to collaborate with each other and talk about you know, what your view is versus theirs and how they like to do things. So that way you can try to match. So that way it does look like one web author or one webmaster rather than 2 or 3. And then as you're copying and pasting, because you may get an email and say, hey, can you put this on the website? Or they share a Google Doc and, hey, can you put this on the website? If you want to put that directly into the website, you'll copy it as plain text. Otherwise, some of that styling comes in from the doc, from the email, and it just doesn't mesh well with the website. So you'll copy and paste as plain text, and Ryan will model that as well. But it's just a really nice one, so that way it looks the way it should look on the web page, rather than getting all jumbled up and having weird spacing because it carried styling from the previous page, doc, or email. Right. So now we're going to get into, this super exciting stuff of the morning. If you weren't already riveted, get ready, hold on. Here we go to web accessibility for government agencies. It's not, as I'm kind of alluding to, it's not the most exciting, but it is very important. I know the state of Maryland, or the state education department, is looking more at making sure educational websites and resources are more compliant with web compliance and accessibility. So we want to be aware of that as we are web authoring. We don't expect us all to be 508 compliant experts, but we do have a resource here where you can refer to what does that mean to be 508 compliant. And although it says tips for Tron webmasters, these are all the same. And there are 10 tips here, I believe, to help you make sure that your content is 508 accessible and is meeting the accessibility standards. So you'll see, and we won't go through all these, but you'll just see there's lots of good hints and tips here and screenshots that'll help you through this to make sure that you're doing what you need to do. I will point out this one though. I like to highlight this one: avoid posting PDFs. And I'm going to say that's really the caveat. Some PDFs were just scanned, and it's basically a picture of that that document. That's not accessible by a screen reader. However, if it was a Word doc or a Google Doc that someone did the save as a PDF, that is accessible by most screen readers. So again, if someone went into the front office and just scanned a PDF and said, here, put this on the website, that's not as accessible. I know we can't always avoid that. Sometimes we have memos from central office and so forth that are in that format that we have to surface, you know, but when possible, see if you can make that accessible. And there is a link on how to make PDFs accessible here. And really the key is that it has to be started from a Word or a Google Doc and then saved as a PDF. So that's one I just like to highlight because I know that's a challenge. Sometimes we don't have total control over that, but when possible, we'll do it from a doc. As I scroll back on this page, this is another good page to at least either know where it is or bookmark, because I really like over here the Wave Web Accessibility tool. This is a way to check. It's a tool that will check your website. And the way we would check a website, and I always like to use this one as an example, let's use the 508 compliant website to see if it's 508 compliant. So what I would do is I would copy, sorry, I did that a little quickly. I'm going to copy that website. So you could do this for your school's website. And then you would paste that web address here and click that little arrow to go. And it's going to run a scan of your website to see is it 508 compliant. On the left-hand side, it's going to highlight where there are errors. Anything that's in red is something urgent that needs your attention. Now, if it's something like this important message here at the top, we can't do much about that because that comes from the district's template. But anything that would be down here in the body is something you would have access to. If you come and click on one of these red areas, it will tell you exactly what the issue is. And this has very low contrast. If that was the case, all I would need to do is just make this text a bit darker. Okay, so anywhere you see one of these little red tags, or you'll see there are these yellow alerts, I can find those here on my page, wherever they may be. And then I can click on one of those and it will tell me what I need to fix. So that's a really nice thing about this tool. Like I said, when you click on one of them, it tells you what the issue is. And if I come over and look at some of the details here, it'll tell me additional information about each one. I click on it, it'll take me to the page. So again, this tool, it walks you through and it takes you through scanning your page for 508 compliance and through the details. You know, as I click on each one of these little tags, it'll take me to those different parts of the page and tell me what's going on and what I need to change. So again, a nice tool that, as I said, you don't need to be a 508 compliant expert. You just need to know where the resources are. And that would be here with this 508 compliance website through web services, and then also the Wave Web Accessibility tool. All right. So let's talk about school requirements for your websites. So the content needs to be on an MCPS managed system for web services to be able to provide you with support. So as long as you're using Episerver for all of your school content, web services is here to help you. But if you decided to use a Wix page or a Google site, web services isn't providing support for things like that. So that's just a clarification. Some schools were doing things like that in the past for departments and so forth. And it's not saying schools can't do that, but if you're looking for support, it all needs to be in Episerver. The requirement is also that it needs to be reviewed and updated regularly, maybe creating calendar reminders in Outlook or a way to just monitor that. I know when I was a webmaster, I set it aside like the third Friday every month to really go in and make sure that the website was up to date. Sure, I was going in other times if I got information, but I always had at least one Friday a month that was devoted to scanning the website and making sure it was up to date. And then these must-haves or these must-includes, many of them are already built in for you because they're just part of the template. So it's not a whole lot that you need to worry about, but things like the calendar, that's already built in. You just have to make sure it's updated. The MCPS links, those will be on your quick links navigation on the left-hand side. So again, you're not having to add those, just make sure that they're there and they're linking to the correct places. Your school hours and contact information. So if there's anything like phone numbers and such, they may need to be updated if you get a new phone system and they update your phone numbers. And same thing with school hours, as they change a little bit year to year, you might have to update those. The really nice thing about the staff directory is you don't need to update that. The staff directory, when you click on that link and it takes you to that other page, that's updated by HR. So as teachers and staff are added to your HR list, it'll automatically populate that staff directory. So the good news is those must includes are basically already taken care of for you. If we have any central office based participants here, very similar requirements, having it updated periodically. It needs to be on the official MCPS template. Again, you don't have a whole lot of choice with that. It's what they give you. And then similar information to the schools, that it has to have your contact information in your staff directory is up to date. All right, so all webmasters should be familiar with the MCPS Web Regulation document. Familiar, I would also say just know where it is, so that way if you need to become familiar with it, it is here for you. But it does go through all the different requirements, regulations that you should be aware of as a webmaster. We're equipping you with a lot of those here today. We're giving you kind of the Cliff Notes version of it. But if you needed to go deeper or would like to go deeper, you have a little bit of light reading here for you. But it is good information. But I would advise to know where this is in the case that you need to find it. But the FAQ section of web services is very helpful. Again, it's almost like the Cliff Notes version of this MCPS Web Regulation. It gives you those requirements we talked about and some other about content that you need to know for managing your websites. All right, so with that, we are going to transition here into the more exciting stuff, the reason you came to see Ryan, I'm sure. This is the information, though, I'll just say, as you're practicing, and you're welcome to try to practice along with us today. I know that's a little tricky in a web session, but if you want to practice, you would use this website here, and that's your training site. Anybody after today, as you want to practice some in kind of a risk-free environment, you can also use this website, and then you would just sign in as one of these users. So it's test 1, test 2, and I think it goes up to 30 if I'm not mistaken, Ryan.
Yeah, it's somewhere at 25 or 30.
Yeah, and then your password would be, if I'm test 1, it's going to be password 1. If I'm test 2, it's password 2, and so forth. So that's how you would log into the training site. And with that, Ryan, I'm going to pass the screen sharing off to you, sir.
All right, so I'm going to start sharing my screen. All right, and let me go ahead to that. So this is the page that Jason was just on. Now, so I'm going to essentially, this is the first time we've offered this session online as opposed to face-to-face. On the face-to-face ones, we would demonstrate something, and then basically you kind of follow along and do it too with one of the test accounts. For today, I think it makes more sense. I'm going to basically demonstrate all the different skills, like, working with text, creating calendar items, and so on. You can certainly try to follow along and do the things as I'm doing them. But it probably makes sense more because for me to demonstrate, and then once the training is over, then for you to practice those skills using one of these test accounts. Now, just so that everyone doesn't pick test 1 and people are overriding other people's information, I'm going to switch I switched to the PDO roster. So I can see, if you can see my screen now, I can see like basically each person has a number next to their name. So like for Anita, she would use test 2 and password 2. And Jeffrey would use test 3 and so on. So look at the number. I'm going to just scroll down slowly and just note the number that your roster is associated with. And that will be the test number, the training account number that you use. Okay, and since we have 17 participants, I'm going to use test 18, the last, the next available free test number. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click. This is basically we're using a training site so that you can practice without messing up your own pages. All right, so I'm going to click on our training instance. All right, and I believe I might actually already be logged in. So actually I'm not. So at the bottom, if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you'll see any MCPS page, there is an MCPS web link. And if I click on that, once it refreshes, I actually am still logged in as test 1. So let me go and sign out and sign in as a test 18. So I'm going to do test 18. And then I'm going to do password 18. Hopefully I'll get logged in. There we go. All right, so once you're logged in, your screen is probably gonna look a lot like mine. It probably, like mine, is going to the MCPS homepage. So it's not going to the page that I want to work on. So before we go to the page, to our training school instance, I just want to talk a little bit about the lay of the land once you're in Episerver. You can see there's this little orange bar up at the top. That basically is kind of the epicenter. You kind of know you're logged in. This bar up here, this orange bar, and then you have this little area up here at the top. That's how you know you're logged in. There's an arrow up at the top. And you can see that there are some additional things like over here on the right side, I can see that's where I'm logged in as. I can see that I'm logged in as test 18. If I click there, I can click and want to log out. That's where I would log out. I'm going to click that arrow again. And so now I kind of have stuff above that orange line and stuff below. And you can see over on the left side, Jason mentioned some of the different terms. Two of the terms we're going to use right now. One is the navigation pane. And that's basically, if I click on that, and then I'm going to, you can see this little push pin is blue. So I know I have pinned that, so meaning it's going to stay open. But the navigation pane basically lets you navigate through your website, through the MCPS website. You're only going to have permission to update your site, but basically, as you can see from this screen that we're on, or my screen, you can see that we're on the MCPS webpage. Eventually, and I'll do that now, you can see there's a section called Training Website. Eventually, when you're back at your facility, you're either going to choose school or somewhere in like District Maine, to go to your office site. But since we're in a training site, we're going to go to training website, and then I'm going to click on the plus next to training school, the plus next to training schools, and then I can see that here are all the different training schools, okay? Or here is the training school. If I click on training school. And then here are all of the pages that are contained within it. And you can see each one of there's like test 1, test 2. So if you want to follow along, choose your corresponding page. So I'm logged in as test 18, so I would click on test 18, and that would navigate me to that page. Okay. So, and that's basically your page to work on in this training instance. So this is the navigation pane over on the left side. You also have an asset pane, which is basically opens up on the right side. And you can see there's this little folder icon up at the top right. And if I click there, it basically opens up the asset pane. And just like with the navigation pane, I can pin the asset pane open so it stays open. But this is basically where you can find a lot of, you can upload PDFs, you can upload images and so on, things that are going to be reused in your site. It's also where you, things like your navigation bar and the hero carousel, which is the slideshow, are also located in the in the asset pane. All right, there are some other things that we'll talk about later on, but you can see that there are some icons up here, kind of at the top left of the screen. The one that is a rectangle with a magnifying glass is the preview button. So what your page would look like if you hadn't published everything yet and you wanted to preview what the page looked like, you would click that button and then you would click on it again to get out of preview mode. You can also see that there is a publish button over here on the right side. Basically, anytime you make changes, things automatically save, but things aren't automatically, once you make a change, things don't automatically get published and are live on the web. It's only when you click the publish button do your saved changes get published to the web. So you could be working on a website and then basically work on it until it's ready, and then eventually publish it when you're ready to have it go live. The last thing that I want to show in this kind of just in our overview of the navigation of Episerver are these two buttons right next. It used to say publish, now it says options, but you have these two buttons here. And right now it says on page editing. And for a lot of the time when you're doing stuff, you're going to be on this because it's, you basically come down, you can basically go to, you can go to like your page, and it's easier if I click on an area, like this main body area. Once I click on it, I can basically have the tools and start editing. If I switch to the what they call all properties, the page is going to look pretty different. You can still work on the page from this all properties, and we will actually be in this all properties area several times today, particularly when we're talking about the calendar items and news items. But for just basic page editing, being on the on-page editing mode is going to be where you want to be. All right. So somewhere on each of the pages, you can see that there's a lot of extra stuff, or there's a lot of things on here. Like at the top, here's your menu. Okay, and you can see edit menu, and we'll be editing that as well. And you can see there are all these different content blocks. Like there's this content block for the hero carousel. And then it says you can drop content here or create a new block. So basically you could put a block underneath your hero carousel. It's actually kind of hard to see, but there's like a one-line main body. And that's basically kind of where you want to put all the stuff, all the information for that page. Is basically that's already a content block. That main body, it's only one line right now, but that's basically your content block for the content that you're going to be uploading. And you can see that there are lots of different options for you to create new blocks and to create new content on this page. Generally, we're going to ignore those. That's more of an advanced Episerver stuff, or Episerver training. We're really concerned with just editing what's there. And really for what's there for us now is like this main body area, okay? All this stuff that says you can draw content and create a new block, when you eventually go to preview your page, you're not going to see any of that. Okay, so like basically once you click on preview, you don't see any of that. You basically just see that main body block, because that's really the only thing other than the hero carousel and the navigation panes that are on your page. All right, so I'm gonna hover over and I'm gonna find where that main body content block is, and I'm going to click on it to basically expand it and now basically be in that content block. And if I flip back to the presentation, there are each of the things that I'm going to be talking about, like working with text and adding links. There are pages for each of these, but I'm going to just kind of walk through them at this point. Basically kind of go in chronological order of the presentation, but it makes more sense to actually demo and show you. So if you've ever worked with Tron or any of the other web authoring tools, you know you have less choices than Google Docs or Microsoft Word. It is basically, you're not going to really have much control over what colors and such your text is. I can see that I like bold and italic, and I can indent and align things in a certain way, but I can't pick Arial black for a font type. That's all already built in to Episerver. All of that stuff is kind of built in. What we do use are what are called heading styles. And so what I'm going to do is you can see that there are 6 heading styles. Basically heading 1 is an emergency message. So we're never going to use heading 1. So I'm going to just do 5 lines of text right now on this page. And then I'm going to show you what each of those different heading styles looks like. So I'm going to just type in a sentence or two on my page. You know, welcome to Mr. McNavage's classroom. Jump to the About Me section. That's for something later on that we're going to be doing. We are glad here. Welcome to first grade. Let me scroll down so you can actually see it. How many lines do I have so far? 1, 2, 3, 4. Welcome to online learning. And we'll do this is going to be. Okay, so basically there's 5 different headings that you can use. And then there's also just regular plain paragraph text. That's what you see that I just used right now. Basically, if you don't set a heading, it's going to type it in as just plain text, a paragraph text. I can see at this point, if I go to heading and choose heading 2, I can see what that looks like. Okay, nice and big. It's already, the format is already done for me. So I'm going to go ahead to heading and heading 3. So you can see that's in red. And I'm going to just switch our heading styles, heading 4. And I'll just do that with the last 2, heading 5, and then heading 6. So you can see, let me go ahead and click on the preview mode. Okay, so now when I click on, you can see what all those different heading styles look like. So that's really how you're going to be setting the text on your page, is by using those heading styles. Okay, so I'm going to click off of preview mode. And at this point, let's go ahead and do the next section. So let's talk about, I'm going to go back into my content block, and let's talk about links. All right, so there's a couple different ways that you can make links, or a couple different link styles. So one, you could link to a page that is another, like I'm on test page 18. Maybe I want to link to test page 10. So that's going to be an internal link. You can also do external links. Maybe you want to, your PTA has a page and you want to link to that PTA page. That would be, and the PTA page is, the PTA does it on, they've created their own web page and they want you to link to their PTA page. I'm going to just do an external link here, and then I'm going to just put internal link. Okay, and so I'm going to just show you both options. So for the internal link, just like you would if you were in Microsoft Word or Google Docs, you're going to highlight your link. You're going to click on the link tool. The link title we've already typed in. It's what we highlighted. Because it's an internal link, we are not going to have it open in a new window. But you can see where it says page here. We're going to click on the ... And then we're back to that navigation structure. At this point, then I can go into that navigation structure, click the little plus signs, and basically pick the page that I want to link to. So in this case, I'm picking test 3 to link to. And I'm going to go ahead and say, okay. So now you can see basically it's highlighted in blue. I can see that's basically made it a link. External link, very similar process. Highlight, click on the link tool. The link title, as I mentioned, is already what we highlighted. This time, because we are going outside of the MCPS web, we want to make it be open in a new page. If you have PDFs, you definitely want to have it open in a new page. A lot of times people, when they're done looking at a PDF, will close the page, and if you don't make it open in a new window, then they'll close out of your whole website. All right, so this time I'm going to choose external link, and you could paste in your external link right now, or you could type it in. I'm going to just use google.com because that's an easy one to remember. I'm going to go ahead and say OK. Now, I want to show you one more linking option. And I'm going to just put down at the bottom of my page. We'll say that there's a section, maybe I have a really long page. There's a lot of text on the page. And I want to have it a link up at the top that will take me to a specific point on the page. They're called anchors or bookmarks. So I'm going to just say about the school is basically a section on this page, and it's way down the page. So I'm going to highlight about the school. You can see that the third icon says anchor, kind of looks like a little bookmark. And I'm going to just call this, you have to give it an ID, so I'm going to give the anchor the ID of about. Now you can see it put a little anchor sign next to about the school. And so now if I go back up to this top and this jump to the about me section, if I highlight it, and if I want to make it basically go to that anchor down on the page, if I highlight it and click the link tool, you can see that there's an option for anchor. And then I can choose the about anchor and say OK. So now I'm going to click on publish because I didn't do that for the text and I haven't done it for the links yet. So I'm going to click on publish and publish changes. And so now all the things I just did would be live on the website. And now I'm going to preview my page. And so now you can see if I click on that jump to about me section, it basically jumps down to that part of the page. Now makes a little less sense since I don't have a lot of text on this page, but you can see how you can have links or anchors or bookmarks that go to specific parts of the page. I'm going to stop previewing now. And let's go ahead and talk about images. Okay. So with images, I'm going to just click on my page here. Now I'm going to go to a blank open part of my page. Images, it's always best if you, with images, if you resize them ahead of time. So if you want your image to be 300 by 300, it is always best if you resize the image before bringing it into your page. There is an image editing tool within Episerver, which I am going to show you. So I've actually already downloaded a couple pictures. I downloaded a couple school pictures this morning. You're not going to be able to like copy and I don't think you can copy and paste from like a copy and paste from Google. You generally have to download the pictures first. So I'm going to basically click on the page where I want the image to go. I've already gone to Google and downloaded a school picture or two. And I'm going to click on the Insert Edit Image icon. Now, this general page right here is if you've already uploaded something into the asset panel. We haven't. We basically just downloaded a picture. I just downloaded a picture from Google. So I'm going to click on the Upload tab. And that's basically if you've downloaded something from Google and you want to upload it onto your page, this is how you would do that. So I'm going to go ahead and you can see it says browse for an image, or you can see it says drop an image here. So if I click on browse, it's basically just going to pull up the regular find window. I'm going to pick one of the school pictures that I found this morning. I'm going to say open. And I'm going to say okay. And okay, there we go. So I said open. You can see that the proportions are pretty large right now. I didn't do any editing at this point. 4,000 by almost 3,000 is a really large picture, so I'm going to just say 500. And you can see that it says constrained proportions, so it'll automatically do this 2901 number in proportion. So I'm going to go ahead and say okay. So now it brought in my picture onto my page. Okay, so there's my picture on my page. And if you click on the picture once, you can see up at the top, right next to where you clicked on the add an image, you have this image editor option. And you can see that you have some different options where you can crop your picture, you can resize it. So if I didn't resize the picture ahead of time and I want to resize it now, I can go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to just say I want this to be 400 for the width. I'm going to say apply. And I'm going to then close out of the window. Okay. Actually, let me do that again. I think I resize. Click 400. I didn't see it at the bottom. Don't close because then it's not going to actually save. Click OK at the bottom. Okay. Let me click apply first, and then OK. Give it a file name. We'll just call this school inside my classroom. And I'll say OK. And so at this point, the picture is there. And I'm going to go ahead and click publish. And then publish changes. And then I'm going to preview the page. All right. So you can see the pictures on the page at this point. I'm going to stop previewing. And let's talk about links now. We've already talked about links to internal and external links. Let's talk about links to documents. So I'm going to click back on that page. Back on the main body content block. And maybe I want to link to a newsletter, a PDF document. So if you were linking to something in Google, it would just be the same as an external link. You would want to basically just create a link to an external link. You'd have it open in a new tab, but it would be an external link. Okay. If you're doing a PDF that is somewhere saved on your computer, you're going to want to upload that PDF first into your asset panel and then link to it on your page. So let's do that first. So on the asset panel on the right side, I'm going to switch from blocks to media, and I'm going to basically go down in that folder structure so that I am at my test 18 page. Okay. So at this point, when I'm on test 18, I can now see that I have this upload files by dropping them here or clicking to browse. So I'm going to click to browse. I'm going to click on the plus sign. It's going to bring up that same, your computer folder structure. And we'll go with the English Grade 2 assessment. Sounds exciting. Okay, so once you click on that, after a few moments, you'll see there's a green bar. It will give you the status, basically saying it's been uploaded. So I'm going to go ahead and close at this point. So at this point, I have that document in my asset panel. One little caveat with the asset panel, say you want to get rid of something that you uploaded into the assets, you can always basically, over on the right side, there are like 3 little lines, and you can basically click on those and then delete anything that's unnecessary at this point. But so once I have my PDF uploaded, I'm going to say, click here for our, we'll say I uploaded a monthly newsletter, And just like when, with our links, you're going to highlight what you want to link to. You're going to click on that link tool. And this time, instead of choosing page or external link or anchor, you're going to choose media. I'm going to click on the ... And at this point, I'm going to go into that folder structure. I find my test 18. And there's my document that I just uploaded. I'm going to say OK. I'm going to make sure, I almost forgot, open in a new window. And I'm going to say OK. So at this point, if I click on Publish and then Preview, if I click here for our monthly newsletter, I can see it opens up that pre-assessment or assessment in a, basically, preview is not available for this item. All right, so basically it's not allowing me to see it in preview, but I can see it open up a new window, and it would open up that document in a new window. All right, I'm going to stop previewing. And actually, I'm going to flip over to the presentation to make sure I haven't missed anything before moving on to the next section. Okay, good. All right. So at this point, we've talked a lot about specific items to specific pages. The next few things that we're going to talk about are basically things for your entire website. So the calendar, news items, menus, and then the hero carousel or the slideshow. So those are the four or five things that we're going to talk about now. So at this point, I'm going to switch over to the main page of the training school site by scrolling up and just clicking on training school. And I can see here over on the right side, you can see that you have this upcoming events, and that's fed by the calendar. If I click on view full calendar, oh, that wants me to edit the calendar. But basically, let me go over in the in the navigation structure. But basically, anything that you put on the full calendar is going to show in this upcoming events area. So I can see if I scroll down in that training school, along with all the test pages, if I scroll down far enough, there's a calendar index. If I click on that, that basically is the calendar page. Okay, and so I can see for July, I'm on July. I can see the pages for July. I'm going to click on the plus sign, or I can see the events for July. If I click on the plus sign, I can see all the different items that have been added to the calendar. And if I click on where it has calendar index and I have the little 3 dash icon to the right, if I click there and say new page, that is basically creating a new calendar item. So I'm going to call this back to school, or we'll say open house. Open house, yeah, that'll be our calendar item. So you can see that there are different types of calendar pages that you can create. Generally, always just choose the suggested one. Same thing's going to happen for news items. Just pick the suggested one. I'm going to click there. And once the page refreshes, it basically pulls it up on a web page, and it doesn't really look all that conducive to editing. And as I mentioned 15 or 20 minutes ago, you have these 2 different buttons up here at the top. The on-page editing mode, which you're going to use most of the time when you're editing pages, what we just covered. But for things like calendar items and news items, you're going to need to use this all properties area. So I'm going to click there on the all properties. And this makes it a lot easier to work on the calendar item. So you can see it, I'm on this event tab. So it gives me a start time and an end time. So I'm going to say it's going to be on July 30th. And we'll say it's not at 1 a.m. We'll say it's at 1 p.m. And then we'll say it's going to be end July 30th. We'll say at 4 p.m. Okay. You could have it be a reoccurring event, since this is an open house, happens once at the beginning of the school year. I'm not going to have that. And then I'm going to switch to the content tab. So title would be what is it going to be called? So open house. Location, we'll say virtual or info to be sent via Connect. And then you'd put your details down here below. You can see that you have all the different options that you would for editing a page. All right, so at this point, if I switch back to that on-page editing mode, it'll look, it won't look great at this point, but it'll actually have the, it'll have the information where it's supposed to be. So that's why I always say switch to that, to the all properties when you're editing a calendar item, because it makes it easier to update. I'm going to go ahead and click publish and then publish again. And then if I go to the calendar page, that calendar index, I should see it on the calendar. All right, so there are 2 things. 1 o'clock, there's an open house, and there's a back to school night. So you can see there are 2 things. And if I click on open house, I can see the details of that event. So that's doing a calendar item. Good thing with calendar items and news items, the process, there's some variations, but 90% of it is the same. So news items, let me just go back to our training school. So you have your calendar item, which are specific dates, but then you have your news and announcements section. So maybe you want to talk about, summer reading or summer assignments or something like that, or give information about back to school supplies or picture day that's coming up, the information about that. You could create a news and announcement. So basically it's going to be very similar to how you created a calendar item. So in that navigation structure, on the navigation pane on the left side, instead of going to calendar index, you're going to go to news index and new page. So we'll just call this summer reading information. As I mentioned before, when you have choices of types, 99.9999% of the time, you're just going to choose suggested. Once that refreshes, you can see that once again, just like in that calendar, when we were in the setting up our calendar, probably not sure where to click on. So this is where you're going to switch to all properties as well. All right, so at this point, I can see it says summer reading information, the title that I gave it, or the name that I gave it. The title, I'm going to give the same thing, summer reading information. Publish date, if you left that blank, it would publish it right away, or you could set a date in the future. You then have what's called the summary. So with a calendar item, you had the title, you have like a short blurb right underneath it. So click here to find out more about summer reading. And then the main body would be, if they actually clicked on the title, all the information. So maybe you have, maybe you have kindergarten info, and then first, and then, come on, second, and so on. And you can put all that information there. All right, so once you are done with all that information, then you would go ahead and click Save. Now, hold on one second. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click Publish. Okay, so so you can see the publish date is set to today at 10:23. Oh, this is what I was trying to look. All the video, all the videos, or the participant screen was in the way. Once I moved that, I now see this is what I was looking for. Date to remove from homepage. Maybe you don't want the summer information, reading information to be on this page after school starts. So I'm going to just say September 1st, I want this to be removed. Okay. So we'll say September 1st. I made a change, so I'm going to go ahead and click Publish Changes. Maybe. But the server seems to be a little slow right now. There we go. And so at this point, if I switch back to that on-page editing mode, seems to be very slow right now. If I switch to that on-page editing mode, it looks a little bit better. But if I switch back to the, let me switch back to the training school. So the home page of the school. And if I scroll down, it's still loading, I guess. There we go. If I scroll down here, I can see here is my news announcement. So you can see it says summer reading. Here is the little, I can't remember what it's called, but like the teaser. And then if you click on the name, on this, if you clicked on the title, it would actually take you to the news announcement. Now it's trying to have you edit the news announcement. But that's basically creating a news announcement. Let me show you one last thing with news announcements. So underneath my news index, so you can see summer reading is the one I just created. If for some reason I kind of, like maybe all this other stuff, like, I don't know, this one that says dog, maybe I have no idea what that is. Maybe I want to get rid of it. I can just click on those little 3 dashes and then click move to trash. Okay. So that's how you can get rid of some of the old items. Same thing, I don't think I showed that with calendar index, but the same thing with a calendar index. If you wanted to get rid of old items, you could do it. You could do it by basically clicking on those 3 dashes and moving to trash. All right. So at this point, let's go ahead and talk about the creating a new page. Okay, so we did calendar items, we did news items. We'll talk about creating a new page, and then we'll talk about adding something to the menu and editing the menu. All right, so I'm going to find my test 18 page. So I'm going to go back to test 18. So this is kind of like my little corner of the world. And if you can see that next to test 18, there's a little plus sign. And I can see that when I click on the plus sign, there's a page underneath test 18. So it's kind of like test 18 is the folder, is the parent page, and then kind of like pages that are related to it that are underneath it, like this LSES Media Center page. That's kind of like a child page underneath the test 18 page. So like if you had a page that was, I don't know, classrooms, you could have a page for first grade under classroom and a page for second grade under classroom and so on. So if I wanted to create, maybe under test 18, maybe I want to create a classrooms page. Just like when we went to news items and calendar items, we're going to click on that 3 dash and click new page. We're going to give it a new page. So we'll call this classrooms. I'm going to go ahead and say okay. All right. So at this point, if you remember me saying at the beginning, there was a lot of extra information on the page, a lot of these extra blocks that if we clicked on preview, you wouldn't see any of these 5 or 6 extra blocks that are on this page. If you hover, or you kind of like navigate around, hover around, you will eventually find that there is that one little block, that main body block. And if I click on it, I can basically at that point go in and start editing the content on that page, just like I showed you at the beginning of my segment. So we'll just say, welcome to our classes on each grade level to learn more. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and click on publish and then publish again. And so now if I click on preview, it's going to be a pretty boring page. It's just basically, welcome to our classroom, click to learn more, but basically you've started that page, okay? Now, the one thing that you have to remember is that page, we've created it, but it's not linked anywhere. Like, unless someone knew the website address to that page, even though we published it, they wouldn't be able to get to it from any navigation on your page. So once you've created the page, you're going to want to make sure that you link to it or put it into like your navigation so that people know where it is. It could be just a link in the content block of a page, or it could be a link on your navigation menu. Since we have to talk about our navigation menus next, we're going to put it on one of our navigation menus. And to do that, I'm going to switch from over here on the asset panel. Right now we were on media because we had, the last time we had put that PDF on the page. I'm sorry, we had uploaded that PDF. If I click on blocks, I can switch now. Well, let me first go to the training page, the training school site. Okay. And if I click on something like training school, well, if I open up the training school and then go to open up a page like home page. Well, let me go to test 18 since that's where I was. All right. So you can see that there are two blocks on this, two blocks on the test 18 page. There is this hero carousel and there's the quick links, okay? So basically this quick links, so you can see over on the left side, there's where it says home and media center. That's the quick link navigation bar. You can also see for the main navigation bar, there's an edit menu where you can basically just click there to start editing it. One thing to keep in mind, in this training instance, each of the test pages has their own quick links bar, but on your school site or on your office site, if you start changing the quick links navigation bar on one page, most likely it's changing it on many other pages in your site. In our test instance, each page has their own quick links navigation panel bar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to update this quick links navigation bar. So I'm going to click on quick links and I'm going to click edit. And when the screen refreshes, it's going to show me kind of in that all properties type window. I can see that there are my two links, home and media center. Now, if I wanted to reposition or edit or delete one of these items, you can see that by clicking on the three dashes, you can do that pretty easily. If I wanted to create a new link, I can click on where it says create a new link right underneath. And it's basically going to bring me up that linked window that we've used several times at this point. So I'm going to have a link to our classrooms page that we just created. So for link title and link name, I'm going to just call them the same thing. I think link title is technically what appears. The link name is what shows in that all properties panel window. Open in, I'm going to keep it because it's an MCPS page. I'm going to have it open, I'm going to have it not open in a new window. And then where it has page, I'm going to navigate to that training schools. And I'm going to go down to test 18. And I'm going to pick classroom and then OK. And I'm going to say OK again. And so at this point, now you can see that I've added a classroom. If I click and want to move it up so it's ahead of Media Center, I could do that. And then I'm going to go ahead and click Publish and publish changes. All right, so now if I go back to that test 18 page, maybe. There we go. I can now see that classrooms menu. Okay. There's also the option, you can see that now that I'm on that classroom page, there's also the option to click on edit there. And that's kind of a way, instead of going to your asset panel and then to the actual item, you can, a different way to get to the same place. All right, so that's working on navigation, navigation bars. So let's, we have one last thing to do, and that's talking about how to update the hero carousel. So the hero carousel, let me just go back to our training school page. And the hero carousel is basically that slideshow that's at the top of the page. So a couple things that I want to point out is you can see that this one has says test 1 carousel, and it, like this one says spring break dates and details. So this is the name of the hero carousel. And then in that kind of that semi-transparent black box on some of the pages, some like this one that says slide 1, that's the title. And then this one says spring break dates. The big lettering is the title of, you can put a title on the picture, and then you can also put a caption, which would be the smaller text. Now, generally, there's usually one hero carousel on your website. There may be, maybe if you have a large school, there might be more than one, but generally there's usually just one. So whenever you're clicking on hero, the hero carousel and the assets to work on it, you are probably working on the one for the entire school. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the little 3 dashes in the asset panel on hero to start working on it. So at this point, I can see here are the 3 slides. Okay. And if I wanted to, you can see that if I click on one and I want to edit that particular one, I can do that. So I can see what it is. Okay, so here's the one that I'm looking at. It's actually probably easiest. Let me go back to the hero carousel. It's actually It's almost easier just to delete ones that have been made incorrectly and then create new ones. And that's kind of what I'm going to show you now. So I'm going to click on Hero, and then I'm going to click on Edit again to get back to where that starting point was. So like if I didn't want this slide, just click on Remove. And so you can see that for this one, that the slide transition is set so that you're going to have 5 seconds in between, but you can make that longer or shorter. And you really control how many slides there are for your hero carousel. You could have, you probably want at least 2, I would think, since it is a slideshow, but you could have 10 or 15, but you just have to keep in mind people's attention spans. Probably 4 or 5 is about the max that you're probably going to want. So I'm going to go ahead, and just like when we were creating a new thing on our navigation bar, I'm going to click on Create a New Block. We'll call this, I think this is, there were 2 slides, we'll call this slide, I can't remember if one of them was called slide 3, so I'll name this slide 4. And so, just like I said in the a couple other times, always just pick the suggested block type. So at this point, you can see, so when it has title, remember some of those pictures had the big, in that semi-transparent black box, they had in big letters a title. You would put that title there. If you don't want a title, leave it blank. Same thing with the caption, the small print in that semi-transparent block. If you want a caption, you could type it in here. If not, leave it blank. You can also have it so that if they click on the block, if they click on the picture, it takes them to a URL. So you could set that as well if you wanted. I'm going to actually just simply click and add an image here. And actually, before I do that, I'm going to just go to the presentation for just a second. And I just want to talk about image size. So there's if you notice that those images on the hero carousel were long rectangles. And generally, you want your hero carousel images should be, as you can see on this page, and this is something you might want to write down, or just make sure that you've bookmarked this presentation. They should be really 1140 by 420. If not, they're not going to fill the screen correctly. So if they're, because if they're just like a square and not a rectangle, it's going to look kind of funny. So you're going to want to do some manipulating and make them as close to that 1140 by 420 as possible. Now, it might be hard to get it exact, but if it was like 1100 by 400, I think that would be just fine. But somewhere, the perfect ideal picture ratio is 1140 by 420. All right. Now, we have some test pictures that most of the folders, like if I click on media for my test 18, most of the folders have some of those hero carousel pictures. Like I can see there's slide 1, 2, and 3. A lot of them have proper ratio pictures already there. So I'm going to use one of those. So I'm going to basically click and drag one of those pictures onto that, into the image. And I'm going to go ahead and click create. And then I'm going to go ahead and click on publish and then publish again. Okay, so now if I go back to the training school page, And once my page refreshes, I apologize that my page is taking a long time to load, but if I click on preview, so at this point, you can basically see the images of that page. You can see like this picture must have gotten cropped somehow, so you can see that it's not quite like it should. There's some so so you just want to as close to as possible make it that 1140 by 420 for your hero carousels. Okay, I'm going to stop previewing. And at this point, I'm going to switch back. That's kind of the end of our content. I'm going to switch back to our presentation. And I think we have one page left that kind of wraps things up. All right, so a couple little just kind of finishing items. So once again, please practice these skills. This was largely demonstration. Some of you might have been able to practice as we were going along. I put the logins, the test site logins on the screen one more time. It's just test one and then password one, and there's the link to the training site. Do practice these skills out. So we're essentially just about done now. So you'll have basically, it was supposed to be a 3-hour training. So take that last hour and practice some of the skills that we just learned. I will send this session was recorded. Well, let me rephrase that. This session minus probably the first 10 minutes was recorded. I'm going to send everyone that was, all of you through PDO, I'm going to send you that recording link so that you can look back at this session. If you get stuck while creating a hero carousel or working with a hero carousel or creating a menu item, you could look back to that section of the training. Jason already basically updated your attendance in PDO, so there isn't an attendance link. Basically, if you are a participant in this meeting, then you got credit for being in through PDO. We updated that already. Let me go back to that final slide. So if you get stuck, webmaster@mcpsmd.org is the best option to get your answers resolved quickly. There are 3 or 4 web producers in the county, and they all monitor that email address. So they'll be able to get back and answer your questions pretty quickly. You can certainly email Jason Milkey or myself. We will get back to you as quickly as possible too. But you can also email that webmaster@mcpsmd.org. The next bullet says attend a webmaster work session. And this was pre-COVID that we had webmaster work sessions face-to-face, where you could basically, if there were things that you were working on and you just wanted some assistance, maybe you were working on something and you got stuck, there were 3-hour work sessions where you could come and basically with a web producer, ask your questions to a web producer and work at a quiet location. Until the COVID situation is over, we aren't having the webmaster work sessions, but if you go to the MCPS webmaster page that Jason showed you earlier, there is a sign up where you can sign up for individual blocks with one of the web producers to answer your own questions. The last bullet point is utilize the Epicenter MyMCPS Classroom course. If you search PDO for Episerver, actually, if you do that right now, you're not going to find anything. Because I'm just looking at this last bullet and I realized that that course ended July 1st. So there is a Episerver course. I need to make a new section of it. Probably won't happen today, but I will get to it definitely by Monday. And if you search PDO for the course, you can sign up for that Episerver course. And it basically, all the things that we talked about today, there are handouts, there are video tutorials, and there are actually simulations that you can walk through that say, that walk you through the process where you're actually clicking on the different things that you're supposed to click on to do that item. And there's also in that webmaster course there's kind of like this intro session part 2 where you learn about additional items like adding a Twitter feed and so on, if you wanted that type of thing on your web page. So that will be coming probably in the next, I would say in the next, we'll say 2 or 3 work days, that Episerver MyMCPS Classroom course should be up and running. With that, I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to see if Jason will come back on out. I see there are there are 26 comments since I started talking in the chat, so maybe there are some questions that have come up.
I think we were able to address most of them. So at this point, if people want to pop some different questions in there, we can address them now. Otherwise, I think most have been answered through the chat already.
Good. And as I mentioned, this presentation, aside for about the first 10 minutes, was recorded, and I will share that link via emailing out a PDO once it's finished. When it's finished processing, I'll share that with everyone. With that, if you don't have any additional questions.
One just came in.
Okay. And if you had enough, you are free to go about the rest of your stuff that you need to do today.
The question is, what is the best tool that we have access to in order to resize pictures? And I'm assuming you're thinking about the hero carousel, because that's one that requires you to resize ahead of time.
If you're on an MCPS computer, paint.net is a good one. If you are in Chrome, like if you are on a Chromebook or on your home computer, I know you can resize in Google Draw. There might be something better.
I haven't found a better image, a web-based one, so I think Google Draw might be your best bet if you're on something else.
Paint.net is a good one if you're on an MCPS computer.
Yep.
All right. We'll hang out for another minute or two if someone thinks of another question. Otherwise, you are free to go. Jason, there was a question that came in.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
I was going to pose a Steeler question.
All right.
I was going to say, my question was, which team has the most Super Bowl victories?
This is a lot more fun when Sherwood's around.
Actually, now I actually have to rephrase that. What's one of the two teams? Because I guess you could say the Patriots too at this point.
There you go, Kira.
Yes. All right. It looks like we don't have any more questions. So enjoy the rest of your day, and we're going to end our session.